In September 24, Patrick Cripps made history as the first player to poll over 40 votes in the 3-2-1 Brownlow system. He was also the fifth winner since 2011 to break or equal the record for most votes in a season. Cripps' winning tally of 45 smashed the votes record by 9, from just one extra game than Martin and Wines, and it sent footy pundits reeling. While few disputed that Cripps was a deserving winner, there were even fewer lining up to proclaim his 2024 season the greatest anyone had seen. In fact, Cripps had fallen just short of Nick Dacos for the Coaches Association champion player, and Marcus Bontempelli was named the Players Association MVP. In comparison, Patrick Dangerfield and Dustin Martin had taken clean sweeps of these awards while setting records in 2016 and 17. Dacos, it's worth mentioning, finished second in the count and also broke the record with 38 votes of his own. Inflation, the scourge of the world for the past 2 years, has come hard for the Brownlow medal. Zooming out from the past decade, the Brownlow count has been experiencing steady inflation for a while. This is every Brownlow winner since the Second World War. To make seasons slightly more comparable, we can present this instead as votes divided by season length, which pulls Cripps ever so slightly back to the field, but boosts Lachie Neale's 31 votes, which came from just a 17-game season in 2020. And finally, let's add a 5-year moving average to reduce some of the noise in the data. This line shows a slow but steady decline in votes during the 70s and 80s, culminating in 17 votes being enough for Robert DiPierdomenico and Greg Williams to share Charlie in 1986. There is then a reversal in this decline, beginning right around 1990. And what could have possibly changed in Australian football around then? Well, it seems as though we can trace Brownlow inflation back to the transition from the VFL to the AFL. But why? This video will delve into some of the theories and trends of Brownlow voting over the past 3 decades, as we try to figure out what's going on with Brownlow vote inflation. Perhaps the simplest answer would be that the gap between the best and the rest is getting bigger. Between increased professionalism, advances in sports science, training routines, tactics, and the rise of data and analytics, modern athletes have vastly different resources at their disposal than their historic counterparts, and these differences could be turning small advantages into larger gaps and truly excellent players. Increased professionalism has certainly been a defining feature of the sport's transition to a national competition. This seems to align with a recent increase in the age of Brownlow winners. Cripps was 29 last year, Lachie Neale was 30 the year before that, and no one under 26 has won the medal in the 2020s. Nat Fyfe and Tom Mitchell are the youngest winners since 2010, whereas in the previous decades, players like Chris Judd, Michael Voss, and Gavin Wanganeen had all broken through far earlier in their careers. The professionalism that enables longer careers could be allowing older, more experienced players to dominate their younger competition more convincingly. There is, however, a Nick Dacos-sized hole in this logic. Those 38 votes in 2024 were recorded as a 21-year-old, and that leads us nicely into the next suggestion. Umpires decide Brownlow votes, and umpires, as much as fans like to forget, are also human beings. An increasingly saturated football media landscape, and a vast improvement in statistics since the turn of the century, has seen the hype around the game's best performing players and the speculation around football's biggest accolades grow stronger than ever. Noise that it's not unreasonable to assume would filter through to the umpiring ranks whether or not they're actively listening. With players like Dacos, it's been hard to ignore the hype. And there was even a potential case of mistaken identity lending a hand on King's birthday 2024, where Nick Dacos polled 1 vote from what I guess you could call a solid game, with 15 disposals and a goal, but he was subbed out of the game just before 3/4 time. Curiously, his brother Josh Dacos, who played the whole match, collected 34 disposals but did not feature in the Brownlow votes. For comparison, in the coaches' votes for the game, Jack Cripps polled a perfect 10, and Josh Dacos was equal second with Jeremy Howe on 7, with no votes going to Nick Dacos. It's not uncommon for a few head-scratching votes like this to pop up across the year, and the vote givers don't seem to get much help to avoid scenarios like this. Fox Sports reported in 2024 that umpires had requested access to stats to supplement their decision-making, but that request was denied by the league, further directing them to base their assessment on the consensus of who impacted games the most. While it's debatable whether this is good or bad, it does again highlight the enormous burden officials are under, and midweek tackle host Lauren Wood summed up their task nicely. They're running their butts off, they are umpiring the hardest game in the world to umpire, and we're adding this layer to them without this safeguard. League CEO Andrew Dillon, however, backed the umpires in. We trust our umpires implicitly. They're professional, elite athletes and incredible decision makers. We spoke to the umpiring group at the end of last season, and the consensus from the umpires was that they were comfortable making the calls on the 3-2-1 without access to the statistics. So this could all just be a silly example, and the umpires may truly have believed Nick was the third best player on the day. Although he only had 15 touches, I do think it's plausible that due to the hype around Nick and the Collingwood cheer every time he gets the ball at the G, the umpires noticed every single one of those disposals. And as have been subbed off at 3/4 time, the scoreline suggests Collingwood were already home by then. Of course, you can find holes in this narrative that hype is impacting votes. One of them is Marcus Bontempelli-sized. Widely lauded as the best player in the league throughout the last decade, the Bont has won 3 AFL Players Association MVPs and a Coaches Award, but no Brownlow. The Coaches Award, as we've been hinting, is an interesting accompaniment to this narrative. Where coaches' votes per match also increases over the course of the modern era, it peaks during the standout seasons of Dangerfield, Martin and Neil, but seems to have levelled back out, where the Brownlow has continued to spike upwards. Although the coaches' votes are only available since 2005, it would seem the Brownlow's persistent inflation may be a unique feature of the way the medal is decided. The shift from 3 field umpires to 4 in 2023 also coincides with this dramatic spike in Brownlow votes, and while it's way too early to see if this trend will hold, we do see a consistent difference between 2 and 3 umpires, over periods that both lasted roughly 20 years. This could reinforce the narrative that in an effort to find consensus on who played best, the most highly regarded players are the easiest to settle on. A related concept is that the game itself has changed, creating a narrower focus on the midfielders. Much has been made of the AFL's efforts to increase scoring in recent years. The argument here is that as scoring decreases, forwards and defenders have a lesser impact on matches. That impact and the votes that come with it are instead being concentrated more highly in the midfield, and it does appear that as scores go down, the Brownlow winners' tally goes up. Diving a little deeper, we can plot each season to see the correlation between the average score on the x-axis and the Brownlow's winners' votes per match on the y-axis. Fitting a general trend line here indeed reinforces that higher scoring seasons have lower vote tallies, as the forwards most likely steal some votes back off the mids. Tony Lockett even managed to win himself the medal in 1987, as he booted 17 goals for the Saints, emblematic of the high-scoring dominance in the 80s and 90s. Lower scoring is likely contributing to the long-term inflation-deflation trends in different eras. However, the recent record-breaking seasons are clustered in the middle to the lower end of the scoring range, suggesting this probably doesn't explain the recent spike in isolation. A specific type of midfielder has been favoured recently as well. Those record setters we mentioned earlier are all big-bodied midfielders who impact at the contest, those most likely to be right under the eyes of the umpire, and are joined by other great contest players in Neil, Mitchell and Fife in the list of recent winners. Further to this, there's also the classic adage that to win the Brownlow, You can't have teammates taking votes off each other, and this stood out again last year as Heaney, Goulden and Warner combined for 76 votes, while Carlton's top three for the night was rounded out by just 16 and 6 from Walsh and Mackay to combine with Cripps for 67. In the team's total vote, Sydney came out on top with the most votes for the night, with the Blues back in equal third. After a closer look, it turned out this was on trend too. The Swans, it so happened, also topped the tally ahead of the Cats and Tigers in 2016 and 17, and you have to go all the way back to Dane Swan in 2011 to find the last time a Brownlow winners team also topped the total team scores. While AFL expansion has continued to spread the best talent thinner across the league, it could also be leading to more scenarios where a player is clearly the dominant vote-getter at their club, or is heavily aided by tactics that revolve around their dominance. We've examined a few ideas here. A lot of them seem to have merit, but also counter-argument, and there's probably no single explanation for the vote inflation phenomenon. Over the modern era, various aspects of these theories likely combine in different ways in every game, creating a slightly different outcome each year. Perhaps some years we do have a season worthy of a record. Some years low scoring means the mids poll all the votes. And slowly adding to the mix a change in umpire dynamics and the deafening roar of the AFL media, all combining to concentrate more votes at the top end of the Brownlow tree. 2024 was the most extreme version of this yet, and it will be interesting to see what 2025 and beyond has in store. AFL.com.au currently predicts Dawson, Dacos, Smith and Anderson to all poll over 30, so high votes look set to continue. If this is the case, the domination posed by midfielders seems as though it's here to stay. Among Monday's favourites, we'll watch with great interest how Smith and Holmes or Anderson and Rowe's votes balance out with some of the lone wolves in the count. And of course, everyone will be eager to see how Jeremy Cameron's season ranks this year, with the highest Coleman tally since Fev in 2009, who finished with just 11 votes himself. When we set out to make this video, we simply wanted to explore why votes were going up. But in hindsight, there's also the separate question of whether we should care that they are. The Brownlow has always had an element of shock and unpredictability, and Cripps' record tally was definitely both of those. If fans knew exactly where the votes would go, would we all tune in to watch names be read out for a couple of hours? There's a great deal of romance in a neutral group of umpires getting to make a gut feel decision on who they think played best. A romance that is becoming rare in today's data-driven game. If we truly believe in the magic of the Brownlow, the more helpful answer might be that as long as the umpires are asked to do the same, we too put down the stats for a night, accept the system for what it is, and when the winner is called up on stage, as long as it feels deserving enough, then maybe the rest doesn't matter.